It's Matthew Robinson. Welcome to a special episode of Back to Byker. How are you?
Well, I'm fine, and thank you very much for asking me to come on. It's a great pleasure to see you, Andrew.
It's lovely to see you. You, of course, were producer, director, and executive producer on Byker Grove. Tell me about your time there.
Well, let's be clear. I wasn't all three at the same time.
No.
I was producer director for the first 7 series.
Yeah.
And then for series 8 and 9, I was executive producer.
Mm-hmm.
But I was there, I was around for 9 years in total. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you first come to be involved in the show, and what was the transition like from it being an idea to then eventually making it on screen?
Okay, well, I was a freelance director in drama for years and years and years. And I just run out of my last job in, I think it was January 1989. And I was thinking, what am I going to do now? I mean, who's going to actually offer me anything? Because it's like acting, being a freelance director, you get asked to do stuff if you're lucky, and you try not to be out of work. Anyway, I got a call from my agent about 6 or 6:30 one rainy January evening, saying, "Would you be interested in directing? No, I'm sorry, producing a show called Byker's Grave?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "It's a children's show called Byker's Grave." And I said, "Tell me more." And she said, "Well, this fantastic executive producer called Andrea Hayden-Smith. She's looking for a producer, and she would like to see you tonight." And I said, "But it's up for 6." And she said, "No, fine, go. I mean, go. She'll see anybody anytime." So it was raining, I remember, and I had to rush out, get a cab, arrived at Andrea's office somewhere in London, soaking wet. And we got on like a house on fire. And she said, I said, "Well, but why is it called Byker's Grave?" And she said, no, Byker Grove, that's the name. So I thought, okay, thank you. And she said, "Would you be interested in doing a children's show?" And at that stage, Andrew, not many people know this, it was going to be for 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Look, you can't do a show that's interesting for people of that age, because if you up the age to teenagers or young teenagers, they become independent of their parents. They begin to have love affairs. They begin to see the world properly. It's much more interesting if you do it that way. So I wouldn't really be interested in doing a show with 7, 8, 9-year-olds, but if you up the age group." So Andrea went off and had a chat with Adele Rose, who had written a pilot for younger kids. And they actually agreed, and they changed it to like 12 to 16-year-olds. Right. So then I said, "Okay, that's much more interesting. But I'd also like to direct as well." She said, "What, you want to produce and direct?" And I said, "Yes." And that evening, Andrea, being the dynamic lady that she was, said, "Okay, you can have the job." So it was as simple as that.
Excellent. And let's talk about the first series and finding your first cast. I assume you're very, very hands-on with that. And obviously Byker was known for going around comprehensive schools and picking out kids who hadn't necessarily had any acting experience before. Was that an important decision?
It was, because at that time there weren't, I don't know if there are now, Andrew, but there weren't stage schools, or not many up in the Northeast. But I mean, just going back a little bit, I remember when I took the train, when I had the job, the first trip I took from London to Newcastle, I remember going over the bridge. I was seeing the bridge there and thinking, somewhere in this place there are some kids, and I'm going to find them, and we're going to turn them into little stars. I was very fortunate in having my assistant Andy Snellgrove as production manager, because he worked at the BBC. And he began the process of getting in touch with local schools and the few drama groups that there were at the time. And we started looking around. And of course, there were then, the scripts were coming in, changed from 6, 7-year-olds to 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. So we had a basic cast, and we knew the sort of people we were looking for.
Mm.
So that was a very exciting process, I have to say. And I was amazed at the talent, the natural acting talent that I found up in Newcastle with Andy Snellgrove. And it's very similar to the talent that I found here in Cambodia, but that's another story, and you probably don't want to get into that. But the Cambodians are absolutely natural actors, just like the kids were in Newcastle.
Yeah. I believe Lindy Ann Barrett was the first cast member to get the role. Is that right?
Honestly, you're asking me to go back. How many years is it now?
Sorry.
5 years. She was certainly, but if she wasn't the first, she was probably the second. But
Yeah.
I mean, how could one resist that?
Yeah.
That glorious golden hair
Yeah.
and that sort of like, devil may care type attitude that she had, which came
Yeah.
across brilliantly in the show.
Mm.
But you just couldn't ignore her. That's for sure.
Mm. Byker was always known for its hard-hitting storylines, didn't patronize the viewers. It tackled teen issues that they faced in their real lives. Some of the storylines received a bit of negative press, in particular, Noddy's gay kiss. I spoke to Brett Adams on here a little while ago. I said it to him, and I'll say it to you. Thank you for covering that storyline. It made a huge difference to me when I was a kid watching the show, and I know it did to a lot of other people. Did you expect a bit of a backlash when you were doing that storyline?
I didn't even think about it. It just seemed a perfectly natural story to do. And I mean, everybody says the gay kiss as
Mm.
though it was a great big long snog.
I
It
know.
actually wasn't. It was about, a second and a half's peck on the
Peck
cheek.
on the cheek.
And obviously Gary reacted very badly and stormed out of the cinema, from what I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, I was directing that myself, I
Mm.
think.
Yeah.
But then much more important were the follow-up episodes and the follow-up series with
Mm.
Noddy's, feelings and how he came to terms with it.
Yeah.
And of course, there were some wonderfully moving scenes about his relationship with Angel when
Mm.
he was trying to explain.
Mm.
That I think is far more important because it was getting into the psychology of it
Mhm.
rather than the kiss itself. But
Yeah.
you're right. Lots of angry letters arrived from lots of mums saying it's disgusting, you can't show this at tea time.
Mm.
There were also a lot of supportive letters, by the way.
Mhm.
But the press reaction, particularly the tabloids and particularly the Sun, we had headlines, I think the next day or the day after, saying, um, uh, producer should be taken out of his office and shot. This is terrible. We can't have this in children's TV.
Mm.
Mind you, I've got to say, I never really saw it as a children's series. I think children isn't the right word. It was a youth series, a teenage series.
Mm.
But of course, it was made by the BBC Children's Department. Therefore, it was called a children's series. But it wasn't really, was it? I mean, like it was teenage, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I've been watching series one and
Yeah.
two recently, and the drama, it is like watching a soap, actually. It
Right.
really,
Well, yes. I mean, not a soap, because a soap is week after week after week, and we only had the first series was 6 episodes, and then
yeah.
we had 20, apart from one, which was series 3,
Mm.
which dropped to 18 because the BBC had a financial crisis, as it nearly always did and still does. But no, I mean, it wasn't. It was a drama serial
Mm.
or a drama series rather than a soap,
Mm.
but because you can't continue um, for 52 weeks a year, certainly not with young people in it like that. Yeah.
Mm. Let's talk about PJ and Duncan,
Yeah.
now Anton Deck, who have
Yeah.
been the show's biggest success story. Was there a moment when you thought these guys are going to be huge?
Um, they're not the only success story.
They're
I
not.
mean, you yourself, Andrew. I wouldn't say you're exactly a shrinking violet, but
No.
yeah. And Donna went on to do his stuff, and
Yes.
um, I'm afraid not that I ever worked with him, so I don't really know the guy. who went on to be this huge, big Hollywood star, right?
Charlie Hunnam.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I had nothing to do with him, so I don't know. But certainly within my period, I mean, the people who became very well known were Jill Halfpenny
Yeah.
and Donna Eyre,
Yeah.
and of course, Ant McPartlin and
Hmm.
Declan Donnelly.
Hmm.
So let me think. I mean, Declan was there in the first series as a tiny little titch. And I can't, he was fun and cheeky, but I had no idea that he was going to then turn into, if you like, one half of Morecambe and Wise today. And then of course we brought in PJ in the second series,
Yeah.
or brought in Anne McPartlin, I should say, in the second series. And he was actually, if you look at those early episodes, he was actually quite awkward.
Mm.
I thought, and he didn't really take off as a natural actor till probably halfway through series three, I would say. So much so, and I can tell this story. The agent Dave Holly,
Yeah.
yeah, was he ever your agent, Dave
No.
Holly? He's the local
I
Newcastle.
know
Well,
I know the name. Yeah.
yeah, well, he was he gave me a lot of good ideas for the older members of the cast.
Mm.
Well, he met me once, and just after he'd seen two or three episodes of Ant McPartlin being PJ the DJ, and he said, "You got a bad one there." He said, "That's not going to work."
Oh, right.
And I said, "Really? I'll give. Come on, Dave." I said, "You've got to give people a chance. Give him a chance to, you know, take off a bit." And bit by bit, he got more natural.
Yeah.
So then you ask, when did they begin to be successful? Well, I think I recognized that there was a chemistry between the two of them around about halfway through series three. So we began to put storylines of them together,
Mm.
halfway through series three and then into series four. Of course, at the end of series four, we had the big tragedy with the paintball blinding.
Mhm.
That was series four, if I think that's right. And then series five was the all the ramifications of that.
Yeah.
But by that time, I knew that we had an enormous success on our hands because of the fan mail that
Yeah.
was pouring in. It was pouring in for everybody, but particularly for Ant and Dec.
Mhm.
So I knew there was something going on there.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you actually look at Ant and Dec's autobiography, they mentioned that I didn't let the cast have their fan letters, which was a policy I took because I just didn't want their little heads to get too big. And
Yes.
also, the other thing was, I didn't want the kids who got less fan letters than others to feel
Yeah.
deprived,
Mm.
and it would make them a bit sad. So, together with the chaperones, we did keep the fan letters away from them. But of
Mm.
course, that once they'd left the show, then I think maybe Anton Deck can correct me on this, but I do think we handed over all the accumulated fan mail, all sacks of it, to them after they'd left the show, because by that time they were adults and their heads could do whatever they wanted, you know.
Yeah. I actually remember that not being allowed to see fan mail, and I think it was a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah,
Everyone-
because it can be very corrupting. It can be, it can, with your personality, if you start,
Yeah.
having people writing and saying, "Oh, I love you, you're the sexiest thing," particularly when you're that age,
Mm.
13, 14, 15,
Mm.
you can
I'm so
get,
glad that we didn't have social media back then as well.
oh, isn't it interesting watching all the playbacks that are going on now? And
Mm.
I'm finding it very, very hard not to binge on them at the
Yeah.
moment. I just want to sit down and I don't want to stop watching.
Yeah.
I think I'm up to end of series two. Gil is just about to kill himself in the
Yeah.
car. I think I've got
Mm.
2 episodes. But I can see now why it got such a big following, because the characters were so good and the
Mhm.
acting was so good, and I had very good writers as well and good storyliners. So we were able to create great storylines for just about every character.
Mm.
In fact, that was one of my editorial ideas, is that every series we looked at who were the main characters for that series, and I tried to spread it around so that every character got a big story, like once every 2 series,
Yeah.
so that it got spread around. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the watching the reruns. I mean, I think it's been a long time coming. People have wanted to watch the old series for a long time, but now it's finally being streamed here in the UK, which is fantastic. It's 36 years later since the show first started, and there's a huge buzz about the show at the minute. Did you think at the time that this would be the case, that we'd still be talking about it all these years later? No.
No, I no. I mean, look, a as I said, I was a jobbing freelance director from 1973 all the
Mm,
way up to 89 when I joined Byker Grove. It actually, in the end, just another job, certainly for the first one or two series.
mm,
But I found myself getting very personally involved in it and seeing, seeing the reaction and all the mail coming in and all the kids coming up to Byker Grove itself, all the kids who wanted to join. And we had the what we called the Avid Fan Convention, where we had open days where sort of all the fans could come and meet the cast. It was very, very popular. One of the another great reason that kids loved it, and I can tell that from the letters we used to get for Grove Gossip, which was our
mhm,
magazine put
mhm.
out, was the Geordie accent. I mean, that was I think it's one of the most favourite accents in the country, actually.
Yeah.
That, let's say, Bristol, I think, is also quite popular.
Mm.
But the number of letters we had from kids saying, we're trying to learn to speak Geordie at school. We had Geordie lessons at school. That was so funny. It used to make me laugh. I printed those letters in Grove Gossip, actually. So but
I
that was another reason I think it took off.
I didn't realize that Casper Berry wasn't a Geordie until I
No,
spoke to him. Yeah,
no.
he did a
Well,
good.
it just shows what a good actor he was. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
very convincing. And then you left in 1997. Is that right?
Uh, no, I was executive producer until 1998, the
98.
first 2 or 3 months, and then I went on to EastEnders after that. Yeah.
EastEnders, yes. Yeah, let's talk about life after Biker. How long were you at EastEnders for?
I stayed as executive producer for 2 years,
Yeah,
98 and 99. I left at the end of 99. Yeah.
yeah.
That was, I mean, after Byker Grove, that was a bit of a, it wasn't a nightmare at all, but it was a complete change of
Was it?
country.
Yes.
I honestly, I mean, because 3 shows a week then, not
Mhm.
four. Is it 5 now? How many a week
I'm
is
not
it
sure.
now?
I'm not sure.
It was 3 at the time, and that was week in, week out, week in,
Mhm.
week out. And it just felt like being at the center of the universe.
Mm.
And because you were getting hit the whole time. You talk about hard hitting storylines on Byker Grove. We used to have complaints in Parliament and government figures and Mary Whitehouse type people complaining about stuff every week on EastEnders.
Mm.
Completely different.
Wow. And then was it directly after leaving EastEnders that you moved to Cambodia?
Oh, no, no. Then I had 3 years, nearly 3 years in Wales,
Okay.
head of drama, BBC Wales.
Ah, yeah.
And that was quite interesting because that coincided with a time when the BBC policy was to try and spread the money out into the regions.
Hmm.
Actually, interestingly, they'd already done that, like in the late 80s, which is why there was money available for Newcastle and
Mm.
Byker Grove. But
Right.
that policy expanded even more
Yeah.
when I went to BBC Wales. And so we got quite a lot of central BBC money to make shows up there. Yeah.
Mm.
So
And
I was there for 3 years.
okay. And then tell me about Cambodia. Uh,
Well, it's now my home,
yeah.
Andrew. I arrived here in 2003,
Yeah.
having seen an advert in the BBC staff newspaper saying producer director wanted to create a 100 episode drama in Cambodia
Yeah.
on health related issues, which actually happened to be HIV
Mhm.
and mother and child health issues.
Right.
Um, and I'd already had 6 weeks leave of absence from the BBC at Wales to go to Kenya to make a similar HIV drama. So I was quite interested in doing message-based type dramas. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Cambodia, quickly grabbed an atlas, had a look at where it was, applied for the job, and after a load of interviews, God, it was tough. I got this job, a 3-year contract, to make this 100-episode drama series in a country I knew very little about, in a language I couldn't possibly speak. Mind you, I couldn't speak Welsh either, but that didn't stop me producing. That didn't stop me producing a 5-day-a-week soap opera called Pobla Pum. But that's all right. So anyway, I arrived in Cambodia in May 2003, and within 2 hours, there was something about that place, and I just loved it. And the contract finished after 3 years. It was a BBC contract paid for by the British government. That ended. What was I going to do? Was I come back to rainy old England and, start being a freelance director all over again on, I don't know, Crossroads or East End? No, Crossroads are finished by then, but whatever, Coronation, no way. I wanted to stay in this amazing country that... So I did, and set up my own production company called KMF, or Khmer Mekong Films. And we've been running that since, nearly 20 years now.
Wow.
And we make all sorts of stuff. We make films for the cinema. We've made 10 movies for the local cinema. We've made TV dramas, comedies, documentaries. We've covered the trials of the Khmer Rouge. I call them monsters, the people who wrecked this country in the 1970s when they killed a quarter of the population. I mean, it's another story, but we covered the trials of the 5 leaders, went on for about 10 years, and we got a commission from the British Embassy to make half-hour programs every week covering the trials. So I'm only just saying, I'm telling you that to give you an idea of the variety of work that I've been doing here. It's everything. And what was the chance of doing that back in England? You're very compartmentalized when you go back there. But to be able to do comedies and movies and TV dramas and documentaries and educational programs, fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. It sounds very different to life in Newcastle. It must be.
I mean, I do come back once or twice a year, and every time I come back, I love going up to Newcastle and meeting up with, some of the old cast and some of the crew. That's always a wonderful treat for me. But I don't want to come back and live in England. This is my home now, and I actually got citizenship 5 years ago. So I'm now a Cambodian citizen as well as being British. I wouldn't give up my British citizenship, obviously, but makes it very, very easy when you get to passport control. I can sort of walk straight in. I don't need visas and so on. So that's nice. So you're talking to a Cambodian.
Yes, fantastic. Matthew, this has been lovely. A pleasure. Thank you.
Well, it's been great talking to you. You look so well, by the way. I mean, we never got to actually work directly together because I was executive producer by the time you came in as Ben Carter. So I
have a feeling that you did one day as a director when I was there.
Oh, really? Is that right?
Yes. But I was very small.
Maybe Helen Gregory, who was the producer, said, I think you need to have a word with that Andrew to sort him out.
Been that, yeah.
I'm sure she didn't. Anyway, whatever happened, you sorted yourself out well, didn't you, man?
Thank you, Matthew. We just went back to Byker.